Good evening and welcome to Christ Church Cranbrook for what I think is our first ever live cast organ recital. The piece I just played was the opening section of Fanfare by Craig Phillips. The next piece I'm going to play is also by Craig Phillips. I thought before I play it, we might check in with Craig, who has kindly accepted my invitation to join us by Skype tonight. Hi Craig, how are you tonight?
I'm good, good. Thank you so much for inviting me on today.
All the way from Los Angeles. It's towards the evening here. It must be a mid-afternoon there.
It's getting towards the later part of the afternoon. Very smoky, hazy day here.
I'm so thrilled that you could join us tonight. Many of the viewers may not necessarily know you, so I just wanted to do a little bit of an introduction. Craig is an amazing composer, and this particular church has maybe a 20-year history with your compositions, because I think it was in 1997 that we commissioned, well, one of my predecessors commissioned a piece called So Much to Sing About.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of fun writing that piece for you.
I believe we sang it last year, and we also sang it in Exeter Cathedral when the choir went on tour last summer.
Fantastic. Good, good, good.
Yeah. So I've known Sweet Breve for probably a decade now.
Wow.
And but one thing I don't know about the piece is sort of a little bit of its genesis and how it got started. I do know that it was written for the Boston AGO chapter. Was that in 2009?
2009, and I was contacted by the chairman of the committee for commissions, and asked to write a piece for the regional convention that summer, which was taking place in Boston. And they had already some specific ideas about what they wanted, and what they wanted was a piece to demonstrate the different families of stops on the organ. And at the same time, they wanted the piece to be no more than roughly about 8 minutes. So I had to think of this as a piece of a little suite of very short pieces. And in my history, this was actually the first time I had written what I would think of as sort of miniature movements, because each movement is, was going to have to be no more than 1 to 2 minutes. So it got me thinking in a kind of different way. And then, of course, each one of the movements is based on the different families of stops, the different colors on the organ. And that was definitely what they were looking for.
Right. And there were no other parameters other than maybe 8 minutes?
That was right. Yeah. They had a specific, budget and the specific time that they were looking at. And yeah. They already had the idea for what kind of a piece they wanted it to be. But other than that, it was left up to me creatively.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I guess since I recorded this piece in 2012,
yeah.
I haven't played it since.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting piece, but each movement is so short. They're really not long enough for a prelude or a postlude that I might be playing in church. But in a recital setting, they're just perfect.
Right. I have played them in church, by the way, by maybe combining the first and the fourth movement together, or the third movement, the reeds. I indicated a place where you could double back and play, so basically twice. But anyway, but it's best, of course, standing on its own.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know, you're a hugely active composer, so tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
Well, I had some projects over the summer that I worked on. One was a big commission. It's a choral work with brass and organ for a church's 150th celebration, I believe it is, which they're not sure when it's going to happen now, but anyway, the piece is done. And I've written some short motets this summer, and right now I'm working on a piece for organ and bassoon that I'm going to include on a concert that I'm doing next month. I thought it was a good time to try to bring in something brand new for that. So,
well, maybe you could tell us the date of that so we could watch.
I believe it's October the 18th. We haven't publicized it yet, but I think that's the date we're going for.
Great. So if we were to go to All Saints Beverly Hills website,
You can find it on the website.
that's wonderful.
And I'll be playing lots of other things as well.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say thank you again for joining us tonight, and I hope I do your music justice this evening.
I really appreciate it. Have a great concert.
Good night.
Thank you.
The next piece on tonight's program is Suite Breve. It was commissioned for the American Guild of Organists Boston Regional Convention in 2009. Each movement features a different group of stops and sounds on the organ, from weighty foundations and dancing flutes to fiery reeds and luscious strings, and finally, full organ in the last movement. As the suite begins, I encourage you to set your volume at barely audible. It's meant to start softly. As the first movement, called Prelude, progresses, more and more pipes will be added into the mix. The pipes used in this movement are called foundations. They are the core sounds of the organ, also known as flue stops. And I have an example of one right here. Prelude from Suite Breve. The second movement, titled Impromptu, is scored for flutes. Flutes on the organ often produce a similar sound to the orchestral flute family, like recorders, a traverse flute, a piccolo, just to name a few. We often think of flutes as being higher-pitched instruments, but there are indeed bass flutes, and there are contrabass flutes, and then there are sub-contrabass flutes. While bass flutes are rare in in orchestral situations, they are common on organs. The largest flute on this organ is over 8 feet long and are usually played by the pedal board with our feet. I have another example of a flute pipe. This is a smaller flute pipe, this one made out of wood. I often think of this movement from Suite Breve as birds singing in the morning as they wake up. Impromptu from Suite Breve. The third movement of Suite Breve is called Fanfare and is scored for the reed stops. Unlike flue pipes, which have no moving parts, the reed pipes have a small reed at the bottom of the pipe that vibrates as air passes through it. This organ has over 20 reed stops, and I'll be using most of them in this performance. Towards the end of the piece, we will hear one specific collection of reed pipes called the 32-foot Contra Pozona. The largest of these pipes is literally 32 feet long. When the organ was built, the organ builder included a small plexiglass window on the longest pipe so we can actually see the reed vibrating. Take a look inside the organ chamber. Fanfare from Suite Breve. The fourth movement, titled Lament, is the shortest and softest piece in Suite Breve. In the hands I will be playing on the string pipes. These are narrow-scaled flute pipes that can imitate the sound of orchestral strings, providing a shimmering halo effect. These pipes are contained in a special enclosure called a swell box. On one side of the enclosure, there are a set of shades, almost like Venetian blinds, that open and close. As they open, more sound is able to escape. Likewise, as they close, less sound is able to escape, resulting in a softer sound. Take a look. While the hands are creating a shimmering halo effect, the feet are playing a delicate solo on the pedal board. Often the feet are busy taking the bass notes, but in this movement, the feet are playing on a higher pitch stop, producing the melody. Lament from Suite Breve. The fifth and final movement is called Epilogue and is scored for full organ. If you've ever heard the phrase, pulling out all the stops, this is where it comes from. This organ has 127 draw knobs, which we often call stops. I won't literally pull on all 127 stops because some of them have a unique purpose that won't be helpful in this context, but I will use about 100 of them. In effect, all the various sounds of the organ at all of the various pitches will combine to create the huge sound we know of when we think the king of instruments, the pipe organ. The movement begins with the same motif presented in the first movement, but this time in the major mode and quite a bit faster. It's only about 2 minutes long, and it ends with a spinning texture that goes into rapid scales and a flashy pedal solo, and then a final cluster chord at the very end of the piece. Epilogue from Suite Breve. The final piece on tonight's program is Serenade by Derek Bourgeois. In Mr. Bourgeois' own words, Serenade is for his own wedding, to be played by the organist as the guest left the ceremony. Not wishing to allow them the luxury of proceeding in an orderly 2/4, the composer wrote the work in 11/8. And in case anyone felt too comfortable, he changed it to 13/8 in the middle. Fall is ever more popular time for weddings, and if anyone would like this piece played at your wedding, just let me know. It's sort of cheeky, and it's full of unexpected twists and turns, and I thought it just might be the perfect way to end the program tonight. Serenade by Derek Bourgeois. Hope you enjoy. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Stay safe and have a great night.